Welcome back to Beyond the Headline, everyone. I'm so excited that you're on the show with us today because I'm here with Julie Samuels, the Executive Director of TechNYC. Julie, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So as I shared, I have a lot of friends who are very bullish on New York tech, so I'm excited to dive into all of these topics with you today. Before we begin, can you introduce us to the work that your team is doing and why now was the right time to get everyone together?
Sure. So just last month, the first week in May, I guess it might be July when people are listening. So the first week in May, we launched TechNYC, which is a nonprofit organization. It's a coalition of tech companies here in New York City that's really focused on working with our community to ensure that New York is the best place to build and grow tech companies. And we think that can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people, to a lot of different companies. But that also means that we're going to dig in on certain types of projects. And I think we'll probably get to talk about this a little more today, but essentially I think of those types of projects in three categories. One is really engaging in state and local policy issues to actually make sure that the laws and regulations on the books work for startups, entrepreneurs, and tech companies here in the city. The second is really championing New York and everything that's amazing and unique about this city as a place to build and grow tech companies. And the third is increased civic and philanthropic engagement. So essentially to make sure that the tech industry here, which is a larger and larger piece of the city's economic pie and is becoming a more mature industry, is also engaged in New York City at large.
One of my favorite ways that you shared it was in a recent article where you had the sentence, founders need to know that New York is open for business.
That's right. And that's something that we think is so important because here's the thing about New York. New York is expensive. New York is, it's not difficult. Well, I mean, I think New York is wonderful, but it can be complicated, right? Because there are so many people and there's so much infrastructure and there's so many competing interests. But that's also what makes it amazing and the best place to build a business. We have the center of gravity for so many major industries here: finance, real estate, marketing, advertising, obviously similar, fashion, beauty products, food, everything, right? Everything is here. So if you want to build a company, a tech company that touches any of those spaces, we think you'd build, where else would you want to build it but here? Obviously, there are other wonderful places too. It's not a zero-sum game, but we really want to celebrate those things that make New York great. However, it's really important that the regulatory state, that the laws on the books also mirror that, and that those things welcome people, that our policymakers are saying to entrepreneurs, you should come here. We want to make it easy and accessible for you.
I'm excited to really dive into some of the nitty-gritty aspects of that. But before we do, what made TechNYC so attractive and meaningful for you to join?
I have been working on tech policy for a long time. I am fundamentally a believer in the proposition that technology can change the world for the better if we get it right. So it's really important to me that we all come together and work on these issues. A lot of the issues that we're working on are really quite hard. They're multifaceted. There are a bunch of stakeholders at the table. There might not be one simple answer, but if we get them right, I think that technology can make the world a lot better for a whole lot of people. And on top of that, I believe that, I know that net new job growth in the United States comes from new firms. So startups, the majority of which fail, obviously, but the ones that succeed create pretty much all of our nation's new jobs. And so I want those in the community in which I live, which is here in New York.
One of the parts of TechNYC that really stood out to me, which is right in that light, is your team's commitment to inclusivity and diversity, really bringing a lot of people around the table. Why do you feel like New York tech is so suited for that, especially with diversity? You guys have a higher population of female founders, which I love.
Yep. Yeah. I think there's a couple of reasons. Some are just very specific to New York City. That have nothing to do with tech, those reasons. I mean, New York City is an incredibly diverse city. It has infrastructure that fosters that diversity. For starters, we have this amazing subway system. So you can live outside of the city. You can afford to live outside of the city and take the train in every day. And I obviously everyone in New York does. I take the subway to and from work every day, and you are on top of everyone. And it's people from all different walks of life, all different ethnicities, all different genders. I mean, it's everyone. And that is so uniquely New York. And it's really an amazing thing. And that is true that's true for everyone's experience in New York. And you also see it reflected in the tech industry. Now, can we do better? Absolutely. Do we have to do better? Absolutely. But I think that we have a pretty good a pretty good place to start from here in New York City.
That was such a great point that Randy Zuckerberg also made in a recent article that she had in Vogue, that it's when you're on the subway, you're walking on a really crowded street, that you're reminded of why you're even trying to solve the problem with tech that you are trying to solve.
That's right. It's all right here. It's in your face. And this is true too when you work on policy work. You don't have the luxury of building a company in isolation, right? You don't have the luxury of getting to build a thing and test all over again in some big open space. Like you here, it's a powder keg. You're on top of everyone all the time, and you've got to find a way to live together. You've got to find a way to work together because you have no other choice.
When it comes, both in that aspect and the team's broader goals for diversity, what are you guys thinking about and working on right now?
Well, there are a lot of things. I mean, the first kind of policy initiative is to really think hard about education. And that's obviously a structural answer to your question, which is to say we need to make sure that students in New York City, frankly, also across the country, are getting the right tools to get the good jobs that tech companies provide. And if we are providing that kind of education in our public school system, if we are providing Americans of all walks of life with access to quality computer science education, then those jobs will be available for those people. But that's not as simple as it sounds, of course. And there's a lot of work we need to do as a city, as a state, and as a country to get there.
What do you feel is the best way to both expose and prepare children for the jobs that they're going to have in the future?
Well, I think that's actually a multifaceted question. I think there are the hard skills that kids need to learn, and I think they, at a young age, need to get introduced to some computer science, to some coding education, because some people are going to be interested in that and some aren't. But if you don't get introduced to it at a young age, you never really know. So that's the first piece. And I think there's another piece too that we talk about a lot, the soft skills. The knowing how to interview well, the knowing what it's like to be in a workplace, giving all of this education needs to be much more well-rounded than just throwing a kid into a program and teaching them how to write, in C++. That's not enough.
Yeah, and it's not preparing someone to take on real-world challenges.
That's right. But, also I think there's an important point here too, which is to say that you're going to have a senior engineer job at Google, and you're going to also have a web developer job at a small local company. And those are both good jobs, and they're different jobs, and there's everything in the middle, and they require different levels of education. And not everyone's going to be a senior engineer at Google, and that's totally okay. There are a lot of other good jobs too. And it's so important that when we think about that stack, about that spectrum, that we're creating availability for everyone for some level of those jobs. We have a lot of work to do there. We're far from that as a country.
I know that a lot of the work that you guys do, whether it's, in discussing and planning how you're going to take action, is within your board and a group of leaders in New York, which I really admire how you have leaders from small companies, medium companies, huge companies. What gets you most excited when you guys are all together?
Well, I think some of the issues around education and diversity are definitely the types of issues that people get incredibly excited about. Access to connectivity. Everyone should have high-speed internet. That's another thing that gets at some of the questions you were asking earlier about how you combat or how you work to increase diversity. The other thing that gets everyone really excited is New York. The thing about New York, there are certain cities like this. New York is not the only one, but people who live here love New York. That cuts across everyone. And so when we get our board together, when we get some of our community leaders together, they're really excited to kind of share the city they love, share the institutions they love, and they want to attract other people and other companies to enjoy that as well.
What are some of your favorite stories about founders building their businesses in New York?
Well, that's a good question. Well, one of the interesting trends we're seeing, and I think there's some stories here, is that a lot of the companies that started as kind of internet-based companies are really starting to open brick and mortar stores here, which has been really interesting. It's a very interesting trend that feels very New York-y to me. Rent the Runway and Birchbox come to mind as high-profile examples of this, but you see it. Oh, and they just opened a Fab store actually by my house, and that's been really interesting. That's such like a New York thing that started online, and then you want a presence because there's so much street traffic, and that's just been a really interesting evolution that I think has been fun to watch. Warby Parker too. They've got now some brick and mortar stores here as well. But talking to all those founders and the dreams they have and how they've been able to unlock them here in New York has been amazing, and it's constantly inspiring.
And when you're walking and you see a Warby Parker store, you're in a meeting and you guys are chatting about the next frontier of New York. What do you feel is, so a lot of companies will open their second office in New York. What do you feel we
Yep.
need to do to get them to open office number one there?
Well, I think a lot of the issues we're working on will help that. These things that directly, the kind of policy issues that directly impact the companies that make up our membership. So we do a lot of work at the state level on issues around privacy and data security and data breach. And we want to make sure that those laws are easy to understand. We don't think that tech companies shouldn't be regulated or that there shouldn't be laws governing them, but we think that those laws should make sense. And so that's something that's really important to us when you're trying to attract founders to New York. But I think to me, the most valuable thing about starting a company here in New York is the access to the institutional knowledge and all of these other verticals. If you're starting an ad tech company, the center of the world of advertising is right here. You've got access to that capital, to that expertise, to all of those mentors, to the talent who maybe don't have the technical skills you need to build a tool, but know everything there is to know about advertising. And that I'm just using advertising as an example, of course, that's true across so many industries here in the city. And we think that that's something that really makes New York special. The other thing that really sets New York apart is the art scene here and the amazing cultural institutions that we think really drive creativity for entrepreneurs in a unique way that you can't find everywhere.
Well, I've never heard the art one. I really like that. And that was another piece that was in Randy Zuckerberg's article
Yep.
about why she came back to New York from San Francisco. When you're walking in New York and going to your favorite spots, what inspires you from a city standpoint influencing the way
Yep.
you run your business?
Well, the creativity in New York City is amazing. I mean, people, how they walk around the street, the amazing outfits they're in, the things they're carrying, the bags, the buildings, everything is, people are constantly, I think, trying to, it's not impress, that's not the right word I'm looking for, but people are always trying so hard to be individual here. And everyone really expresses that in their own way. And that's been so interesting and amazing and inspirational as, we found this new organization. In many ways, we're founders. There's so much inspiration on the street. Literally, I'm looking out my window right now and it's just, there's every kind of person imaginable. There's every kind of, I'm across the street from the Empire State Building. It's amazing. And it's just such a grand scale. And you're all, again, I keep saying this, but you're all together. You get on the subway with everyone. And you can really see how people are using technology. You can see how people are interacting with each other. You are like in the thick of it. And there's no way to protect yourself from that. You should not. New York is not for everyone. And I think that's an important point too. We spent a lot of time talking about what makes New York amazing. And I truly think that. And that's why I'm here and why I do this job. But there are a lot of amazing places for a lot of different people. And I think one of the things we're spending a lot of time thinking about is that I think for many years, people really felt like if you wanted to be in tech, you had to go to the Bay Area. And I did that. I spent time in the Bay Area. But I think now the answer isn't so simple. There are a lot of places you can do this work from, and you should be able to do it from wherever you want. And we think New York's a great place to do it. Is it for everyone? No. But for the people who want to be here, it's an amazing opportunity.
I'm really glad that you brought up the Bay Area because one of the questions I was most excited to ask you actually is everybody's always comparing New York to Silicon Valley. Is New York going to be Silicon Valley? What's the next Silicon Valley? Do you want to be compared to Silicon Valley?
Absolutely not. I think it's unfortunate that that happens a lot because, again, there are things about Silicon Valley that are amazing. I feel so lucky that I got to live there. I think it was a wonderful experience. There's so much about it that I love. And New York is totally different. It is fundamentally different and both wonderful in their own ways. They are different ways. I can talk about specifics, but I'm not even sure that's really interesting. But I do think that this constantly kind of comparing New York to Silicon Valley is actually harmful because we're good at different things.
And that's a great thing.
Totally.
We don't need two of the same place.
That's right. That's right. I think that is exactly right. And I think people do that because I think it's easy to do that. I think journalists like to do that because, it tells a narrative that seems compelling. But I actually think that that is an oversimplified, not helpful answer.
And you just can't compare the culture and the being of an entire city.
That's right. I mean, you can compare them in some ways, but not on the same scale, right? Like I can tell you things that are really different about each, but not that makes one better at the other, at any given thing.
What do you think are some misconceptions about the tech scene in New York that everyone has?
Well, one of the things that I have found to be true about I'm going to take that backwards. One of the things I found to be true about the tech scene here is that there really is a sense of community. It does not feel cutthroat. It doesn't have this kind of like New York competitive thing that I think people just assume happens here. But that there's a really vibrant community of people who get along very well, who know each other well, have been working together for many years, and are very supportive of each other's efforts. I also think that you see a lot of high-profile companies here who are not on a kind of traditional high-growth trajectory. Think about companies like Etsy, which is a B Corp, or Kickstarter. Those are companies that do very well, obviously, big success stories, but they're not on this kind of constantly trying to reach all new, really high profit numbers every year. They're kind of happy being where they are, sticking to their mission and doing what they do. And I think that's kind of something that a lot of people don't think of when they think of New York.
I love that. And I like that you turned the question back too. As we look ahead for the rest of 2016, what's on your mind? What are you excited about?
Well, I mean, listen, in many ways, I'm a founder. I am a founder, and we just launched a little over a month ago. So for the rest of 2016, we're really focused on getting the organization up and running, doing some hiring, getting time to actually do the substantive work. That's really important to what we do. So I think that's kind of my primary personal goal. But the things that I'm the most excited about are really spending time meeting with our community, getting to know the companies, getting to know what their interests are, and what issues they care about the most, getting to know all the policymakers. And it's not just as if we sit in the middle, but what I really look forward to doing is bringing together the policymakers and the people who are working at those companies, whether it be the CEO or the engineer. That's incredibly important.
And as you bring those together, which again, it gets me excited about how you have so many different voices involved, has there been a standout issue that people are most eager to tackle?
Education comes up a lot. High-speed internet. We've obviously had some issues here with some of the sharing economy companies lately, so that comes up a lot. Connectivity in the subway, Wi-Fi underground comes up a ton. A lot of people bring that up right away. I was actually shocked how many people brought that up right away. Those are kind of some of the big ones, but you'd be surprised, all kinds of companies have all different issues. And we really look forward to kind of digging in and figuring out which of those issues really cut across the industry, because that's where we'll really be active and digging in and being helpful.
And what's the best way, Julie, for companies to get involved, for individuals to get involved?
So, technyc.org is the website, and companies this is another important point. We have a tiered membership structure. So if a company has under 20 employees, it's free. So you literally just sign up at the website and you will end up on our website and be included in all of our member activities. Individuals too can sign up for a newsletter. They will get invited to a bunch of our events. We'll have a lot of events. We've already had a handful of events. It's been really fun. And so getting involved in the community is really as simple as signing up on the website for now. But we're really accessible. All of our information is on the website. You should feel free to shoot an email. We're really working right now on growing our community and growing our network. So now's the time.
Fantastic. Well, I'm so grateful that we got to highlight all of the initiatives that you guys are targeting. Extremely excited to see how everything goes on the education front. Of course, it's a long road, but it's always wonderful to hear that those conversations are really at the forefront. How can everyone stay up to date with you and all the knowings of what's going on in case they're not in New York?
So the best way is probably Twitter. And you can follow TechNYC on Twitter at TechNYC. And I'm at Julie P. Samuels. Julie P. Samuels, Samuels. And our newsletter, which we're eventually going to get going out bi-weekly, but we'll probably have a slower ramp up this summer. But we have had one newsletter that really sets forth all the stuff we've done, and we posted it as a blog post on our website. So you can really kind of see what we did in our first month. And we did a lot for month one. I'm really actually feeling quite pleased about it. And so you can go to the website, technyc.org. It's on the front page. But if you dig into our blog section, it's the most recent blog post.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks so much for having me.